COVID-19 has accelerated many forces that the industry was already facing, like declining rep access, more virtual, digital, and telehealth engagements, and increased focus on demonstrating value through health economics and outcomes research and real-world evidence.
Welcome to the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast, where we delve deep into the life sciences industry and uncover effective strategies, innovations, and future trends. Your host, Axtria's Jasmeet Soni, engages highly acclaimed leaders in discussions focused on directing commercial success in the life sciences industry. Whether you're transforming your commercial success strategy or just craving dynamic discussion, this is the show for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jasmeet Soni, and welcome to the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Axtria. Our goal with this show is to bring to you effective strategies, innovations, and most importantly, people who are driving improved business and patient outcomes within the life sciences industry. Our guest today is Jeff Tomlinson. Jeff has nearly 35 years of pharma industry experience on both manufacturer and consulting side. He's the go-to expert in the commercial model design, including Salesforce size and structure, customer segmentation, and payer markets. Jeff has worked with dozens of large pharma companies, helping them run their commercial analytics groups. And he has also spent time in the field, marketing, and payer groups, which gives him a unique perspective and understanding of the commercial business. Jeff is also a member of the Axtria's COVID-19 task force and has helped clients adjust their go-to-market planning through the various stages of the pandemic. Jeff, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jasmeet.
Jeff, the title for today's episode is The Disruptions and Innovations in the Pharma Commercial Model Design. So it only makes sense to first talk about the disruptions that are driving the evolution of the pharma commercial model. Can you set some context for our audience and talk about these disruptions?
Sure. So first of all, there are many forces that are driving the disruption for our pharma and life science companies. We have our traditional forces like new products coming into the market or new indications. Sometimes there's loss of exclusivity with generics and biosimilars becoming available. There's always increased competition that we're seeing many additional companies come out, particularly in oncology and some rare diseases. We're also noticing that some larger companies, they feel siloed, monolithic, very bureaucratic and slow, and they're looking to change that. And then other smaller companies may be more financially strained and are looking to most effectively optimize their resources. There's some additional factors that are kind of external and independent of COVID. So we have company portfolios that are shifting to smaller patient populations in rare diseases. This makes it more challenging for R&D, and we're also seeing higher treatment cost. We're also seeing an expansion of health economics outcomes research and real-world evidence. This is helping companies to find that value proposition in addition to the safety and efficacy for their products. There's also a greater need for facts, not just speculation as to what the value could be. We're also seeing more data. There's additional data sources. We're seeing data both structured and unstructured. And with that increase in data, we're also seeing a need to interconnect that data or data interoperability. We're also seeing more complex customers. We're seeing a rise in health systems and IDNs, and they are increasing their membership. We're also seeing other buying groups and GPOs have more control of products that are going through their channels. We're also seeing some state government agencies like departments of health having greater influence on things like vaccines. In addition, we're seeing pharmacy and specialty pharmacies in particular play a more important role. We're also seeing that there are certain factors that are driven by COVID-19, such as the reduction in patient visits that we've seen. And this has a particular impact for products like vaccines and infusions that require the patients to come in order to receive their products. We've also seen a noted decrease in the number of new to brand prescriptions, also being heavily influenced by that reduction in patient visits. In addition, we're seeing an increased use of telehealth with physicians reaching out to their patients in a virtual means. Then we're also seeing several factors that have been accelerated by COVID-19. So the reduced access of reps to HCPs continues and has gotten worse. This consolidation of providers, especially in harder economic times, is making large providers even larger. We're also seeing the expansion of these large health systems at the same time that they are restricting the autonomy of the HCPs to make individual treatment choices across a variety of areas. Further, we're seeing an expansion of virtual and digital customer engagements. We're also seeing that payers are more aggressively managing markets, including kind of some old sacred cows like oncology and HIV that before had not been aggressively managed. We're also seeing our economy move towards a recession. And at the same time with that, we're seeing a shift in channels to more Medicaid and government channels from traditional commercial. At this time, we're also seeing that there's an increased need for patient assistance, and that patient assistance programs, including copay programs, have generally over COVID time been at one of their highest. We're also on the verge of possibly seeing a Medicare type option for most, and that would have a tremendous influence on moving patients from a commercial channel into more of a government channel. So these are some of the forces that we're seeing today.
That is comprehensive, Jeff. And, what a way to start. That's a lot of different ways. And, these are the forces that are actually driving the disruption and the changes. And thanks for setting the context for our audience. Mm-hmm. As we describe the disruptions and the evolution, it's natural to wonder what the future might look like. It would really help if you could describe the future state, both in the short term and the long term.
Okay, well, let's start with the short term. The first thing that we're going to see is obviously this increase in digital and virtual engagements. Essentially, across everywhere, we're going to need to make more virtual calls, and that is likely to continue into the future. We're also going to have to be providing patient assistance, not only in our kind of traditional channels, but perhaps even more so with copay cards and other programs. We're also seeing some companies begin to have sales force reductions. So they're downsizing some of their larger sales force in order to be more efficient. We're also seeing other companies that had plans for expansions to delay those plans and try to see what's going to happen post-COVID. We're also seeing a changing role or changing of roles to a mix that includes more virtual. So now we're seeing reps that had always been face-to-face, now having a mix of both some face-to-face when available, as well as virtual efforts. And most companies are planning to continue that. Another thing that we're seeing is people are accelerating their movement away from kind of multi-channel marketing, where it's really focused more on marketing, sending information out, to omnichannel, which is much more centered around what the patient wants, delivered via media and channels that the customer wants. We're also seeing other companies are really just in a wait and see mode, and they've been in this mode since the middle of last year, trying to wait and see what are the impacts of COVID, how are they going to impact their sales force, and when can they go back to some new normal. Now, for a longer term, what we've seen and what we plan to see more of is an increase in customer focus, and that really applies to all customers. So we're going to see patient centricity with the focus on the progression through the patient journey across multiple customer types. So as providers look at patient journey, payers look at patient journey, also our clients are looking at the Salesforce journey to see how best they can interact with all customers. We're also seeing the major metropolitan and business areas using different operational models with different levels of resources based on the needs of a particular ecosystem. Further, we're also seeing increased collaboration between commercial R&D. And this is happening primarily today. We're seeing this in the medical with the medical organization working with the commercial organization post-launch to really demonstrate the value of medicines to payers as well as provider groups. Commercial organizations are also going to be becoming more involved in the early clinical stage so that in the phase 1, phase 2, that they can set up secondary endpoints that measure not only the efficacy and safety of their products, but also can demonstrate value. And whether that value is in reduction of hospitalizations, reduction in return to hospitals, other secondary endpoints are being added now so that when the product becomes available, there's information that can further demonstrate value. We're also going to see a rep engaged omnichannel along with the next best action so that the rep continues to get information about how they may want to adjust their promotion. And again, as I said earlier, the multi-channel is really evolving from a marketing focus to much more of a customer focus. And the rep, with their deep customer intimacy, are really going to be operating much like a quarterback and delivering promotionals across all channels based upon that customer intimacy and information that they can receive from the home office through their omnichannel efforts. These involve using artificial intelligence and machine learning to support suggestions so that the sales force can deliver their promotions in a manner that's going to be most effective for their customers. And these suggestions are going to be delivered without human interference. So the idea here is that we have our ingestion of data, our modeling, and then our output is all set up such that it can be done without any human interference as long as the data and outputs meet specified standards. So these are some of the trends that we're seeing, and especially the long-term trends towards really having a rep engaged with their omnichannel and having the home office kind of provide all these things really without human interference.
And that makes sense. I mean, it's really exciting what lies ahead of us, but it'll be a miss to not say that it is also going to be very challenging. So as you work with customers, what are they focusing on in terms of commercial model design adjustments? Can you provide some examples from the industry?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a heavy focus on digital, virtual, and omnichannel. And Novartis noted that they have, quote, embarked on an ambitious transformation to become the leading medicines company powered by data, science, and digital technologies. So clearly they are investing in digital, virtual, and omnichannel. We also see that Genentech and Endo are beginning to integrate their commercial and R&D groups, with Endo commenting, and I quote, "We are revamping and improving organizational effectiveness with a strong focus on patient outcomes, HEOR, and real-world evidence." And they are really working on improving the value that they can demonstrate on their products, and also are looking at value-based pricing. We're also seeing other customers, as I mentioned before, bringing that commercial thinking into early clinical development so they can move away from just a target product profile that's focused on safety and efficacy to much more of a target value profile, which ensures they can demonstrate a competitive and compelling value proposition supported by data when their product is launched. We're also seeing other innovations is the focusing on a local healthcare market and not taking a quote unquote kind of one size fits all approach. So Genentech recently communicated that they, and I quote, are transitioning from a national strategy and organizational model to one focused around local healthcare ecosystems. So they are breaking away from kind of a national command and control approach and much more focused on what's the right go-to model across different ecosystems. And these are systems like, what do we do in the Boston market? What do we do in the Seattle market? And how does that differ from what we may do in the Dallas market or the Atlanta market?
So it seems like the focus is shifting, as you mentioned, from a global, national to a local healthcare ecosystems. And I love how you have insights on what's happening in the industry. And I want to ask a related question. Have you seen executives following some common principle or common themes across your customer base?
I really see that there are kind of four major themes in which companies are really seeking to improve as they consider adjusting their commercial approach. The first is customer insight. With things changing so quickly, it's imperative that you understand your customer, their needs, their pain points, and their objectives so that you can create kind of win-win solutions that benefit both the customer as well as the pharma company. And they're doing that as well as a collection of customer-facing roles that encourage engagement. So they're truly trying to understand how they can best interact with customers. The second kind of theme is data interoperability. As I mentioned before, there's been a gigantic increase in the different data sources and the amount of data. And to be successful, you must that requires a collection of often dispersed data from a variety of resources, but then also the ability to quickly ingest that data and interconnect it to create the most comprehensive view of customers and markets. The third has really been an explosion in the use of analytics involving artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what good is a lot of data if you really can't uncover the insights? So companies are starting with feature engineering of their data in order to rapidly grow their use of technologies like neural networks, random forest, XGBoost, and other algorithms that can quickly learn and make predictions with data that can drive targeting with the right messages, the right media, and the right frequency, along with further suggestions to enhance the impact of promotions. The last theme that we're seeing is really that focused on value-based outcomes. Again, companies must be able to demonstrate both a compelling value proposition along with the relevant clinical information that providers and payers require.
Yeah, love the way you split this into 4 different buckets, and that makes it much easier to understand. Now, if we were to switch gears a little bit and talk about innovation, how are companies innovating to deal with all this change? Is there one path or multiple innovation paths to come up with a commercial model design that is going to be ready for the future?
Well, I think obviously there are many ways to skin a cat here. And I kind of see 4 different approaches, and let me kind of review some of their pros and cons. So first, companies can build these capabilities internally. Unfortunately, that can be expensive and time-consuming, and it may not well align to what really is the underlying core strengths of a pharmaceutical company. The second is you can buy it, and you can either buy it off the shelf or buy it from other vendors. But however, when you buy it, then you also need to keep in mind that you're going to have to maintain it as well. Another option is to outsource it, which is likely financially sound. Unfortunately, you just need to make sure that you identify the right outsource provider to be your partner, someone who is dependent, who is dependable, and will be there for you in the long term. The fourth option is to partner with someone who has the expertise that you may not have, but they have expertise that you do. And so finding partners where you can combine individual strengths across those different areas is another avenue for some company.
Yeah, and every business has a unique take on innovation, which is expected, as you just described. And the approaches that they take, the most important part is that innovation is happening in our industry, which is always good to know. I know you're doing a lot of this work for our customers. Can you describe your approach and how it is different from others in the market?
So I'll describe our approach. We kind of use a multifaceted approach that first starts with really developing a customer engagement strategy based on the needs, the preferences, the decision-making, what service needs customers have, what are their interaction preferences, and ways of working. And we look at this across various customer types. The second thing that we do is with that information, we begin to develop specific roles and responsibilities for each customer-facing team. It's kind of what you're doing working. How could it work better? Or sometimes we just have to blow it up and play with different and new roles to kind of see if they might have a better fit. And while we're working on those roles and responsibilities, we engage our customers to kind of pressure test them to see if they're currently better than what they're doing, and also to make sure that they're going to be effective once they roll them out. The third kind of approach that we take is really helping companies uncover what we refer to as different market archetypes that consider the differences and similarities in a local market ecosystem. So kind of we look at what is the impact of payers, what is the impact of health systems, what is the penetration, what is the level of consolidation, and then also look at other factors such that then we can develop a set of archetypes, about 3 to 5 different archetypes, that then they can use those archetypes to kind of model their structure around different ecosystems. So they're really recognizing that one size fits all won't work, but also at the same time, neither will kind of the Baskin and Robbins 31 flavors approach. If they use a variety, we can use a variety of approaches along with clustering techniques to really help our customers identify about 3 to 5 market archetypes that typically require a different set and mix of corporate roles as well as different sizing. The next component is kind of the sizing each of those teams and also what's the best kind of management structure for that group based upon the ecosystems. And there are various approaches to sizing, from workload analysis to affordable coverage models to the classic sales response model to really determine the appropriate number of folks that you want in each role, and we will incorporate that. But then we also want to make sure that each market that we address the customer needs and also make sure that all of the sizes are in line with our financial plan. And then the last thing, and probably much more important in recent years, is when we make a change to our commercial model, we also need to make sure that we have the internal capabilities to operationalize it. And while many companies recognize that they have the need to update their commercial model, their new commercial model is also going to require new capabilities that they will need to develop. And so we're helping our clients break down their information and their technology needs, along with their operational needs, so that they can effectively manage and incentivize evolving commercial roles. We also help them from skill sets, new guidelines and policies to training and development, and work with our clients to ensure that they have the right capabilities and not just a new commercial model that's going to struggle due to operational issues.
Jeff, thanks for those insights. I would like to summarize our discussions so the audience has some key takeaways. So what I understand is, one, COVID-19 has accelerated many forces that the industry was already facing, like declining rep access, movement to more virtual, digital, and telehealth engagements, and increased focus on demonstrating value through health economics and outcomes research and real-world evidence. Two, companies are focused on customer insight, data interoperability, analytics with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and value-based outcomes with health economics outcomes research available at or near launch. And three, that the commercial model must focus on customer engagement strategy, role and responsibility development, identifying market archetypes to foster management of local health market ecosystems, size and structure, and capabilities to support a new commercial approach. And that is essentially how Axtria is delivering unique value to our customers. Is there anything else you would like to add to the summary?
Well, that's already quite a bit. I've been in the industry, as you mentioned, over 30 years, and I've seen quite a bit of change over those years. However, I truly believe that the next few years will bring even more change to how the pharmaceutical and biological companies are commercializing their products with a renewed focus on patients, those who provide for their care, and those who finance their care.
Absolutely. And there's going to be more change in the industry in the next 10 years than probably what has happened in the last 100, I guess. Jeff.
Could be.
Yes. Jeff, this has been an extremely insightful conversation, and I'm sure our audience will be able to take away some of these learnings to deal with the ongoing disruption and find innovative ways to commercialize products going forward. As a reminder, there are tons of resources on Axtria's website and Research Hub on commercial model design innovations. Jeff, thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing your knowledge and deep experience in this space.
Oh, well, Jasmeet, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Absolutely. To the audience, thank you so much for joining us today, and tune in soon for the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast. If you loved this episode, please share with friends and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. For more information, visit lifesciencespodcast.com. Until next time.